Welcome to Judicial Dollars and Cents, brought to you by Anders Virtual CFO Services team from all across the United States. I'm John Scott, and in each episode, we'll shine a light on the financial side of the legal world, turning law firm numbers into impact-driven stories. From taxes and profitability to practice growth and leadership, we sit down with law firm innovators who are shaping the future of the profession. Let's dive in, right here on Judicial Dollars and Cents. Well, welcome back to Judicial Dollars and Cents, the podcast where we dive into the business side of running a law firm. I'm John Scott with Anders Virtual CFO Services for law firms, and each week we talk with industry experts who help law firm leaders think differently about growth, profitability, and performance so they can build practices that last. Today, we welcome Eric Voogt. Eric is the founder and executive chairman of Proof Technology, a legal tech company that is modernizing how law firms serve legal documents and perform e-filing services nationwide. Before founding Proof, Eric was a licensed attorney and managing partner of his own plaintiff's firm in Denver, Colorado, with more than 2 decades of experience in litigation. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. All that just makes me sound old.
We're not old yet.
Yeah, that's right.
Although when my parents were this age, I thought that was old, but we're getting there.
That's right. That's right. I'm happy to be here. I'm real excited about having this conversation.
Hey, I love to understand and hear people's origin stories. Can you tell me how you got from law school to running a tech company?
Man, certainly spent a lot of time trying cases and managing a law firm. I think 15 years here in Denver, managing my law firm. And I think when people ask me about the origin story, I'd like to start just with the motivations, right? Because I think they tie to some of the things we're going to talk about today. And I think I had a general motivation. I was and remain frustrated with the number of clients who had just causes that I couldn't represent. I couldn't, basically they don't have the money or they weren't injured enough to justify or to have the financial wherewithal or a contingency fee arrangement that would allow us as a law firm with all our expenses in the inefficient way that we try cases. And so that was number one, right? I had a general sense of frustration, maybe 24 out of 25 cases that come across my desk, with claims that have significant merit, but you can't reach them, right? You can't help them. And going it alone as a pro se party is next to impossible. So there's a justice gap in the United States that really had frustrated me. And one of the keys to closing that justice gap is technology, right? And we've seen a big boom in technology and legal tech. We can talk about that. The other motivation was a little bit of a personal tragedy for me. I had this longtime client of the firm that I had done at least a dozen cases for, and I lost a case on failure of service of process, right? Every case starts with you got to give the court notice of your claims, and then you have to serve in a constitutionally required way, right? Pineapple Express, you got to hand the documents to them so they know the importance of responding to this or having their rights curtailed. Well, I had a process server, didn't know the guy's name. He claimed to have served these documents correct. The judge said to me, or I went to collect the judgment we got, the default judgment we got for about $250,000, attached some property, went to foreclose on that property, and then all of a sudden the defendants, these real estate developers, hired a lawyer, right? And the lawyer said, you didn't serve my clients correctly. We want the court to vacate this judgment, right? And so the judge says, well, it's disputed fact. Let's have a whole trial. We had a 1.5 day trial, John, on whether these documents got delivered correctly. Witnesses called, everything, and I'll never forget. The judge was going to rule from the bench, which is pretty unusual. It says it's not really that close of a call. And the judge, I remember he holds up the affidavit of service, which says that my guy did it right, hit from the bench. And he's like, Mr. Voogt, this is all I got. This is all I got. Otherwise, I got a bunch of conflicting testimony. This is all the proof I got. And it's not enough. You're going to have to start over. Client fired me, didn't pay for that, the 15 grand that I billed for, doing that evidentiary hearing, and never hired us again. And it just made me think, okay, the combination of lack of tech and inefficiency in law, especially in litigation, and there's just not enough proof here, right? So we have endeavored, our vision from day one is to eliminate these disputes about whether somebody got these documents in the legal way, in a constitutional due process way, by injecting some technology, a lot of technology into how these things are done.
So what was the defect in what your server did, and how does your technology address that defect?
That's a great question. And so great, I'll do the before and after, right? And this will lead into why Proof's technology is such a great product market fit. And I think the before and after will let your listeners of this podcast understand why it's better today. So the before, right? First of all, you start with, court gives you 90 to 120 days to deliver these documents. That's, FedEx, has got nothing on us from a logistics company perspective, because everybody wants the FedEx package, right? Nobody wants what we're delivering, right? And we're doing it 80,000 times a month under the rubric across the country of different laws from federal, state to local jurisdictions. So I'm like, tell my FedEx friends, man, you got nothing. You've solved a much easier problem than we've solved. But so you can see how much time the court gives you. And the way it's done, or way it was done, is I would file my case, right? And then maybe I had a half a dozen defendants, right? And so then I'd say, paralegal, can you find a process server in the areas where each one of those defendants are located, as best as you can figure it out. Then you can fax or email the documents over to them after negotiating a price, after making sure that they do a good job by maybe asking for referrals from local firms across the country. Then they get the docs, right? And then they find somebody, Uncle Joe, to deliver those documents. You never know that guy's name. You never have any communication with that person. And to get an update, that paralegal has to call the 6 different process serving companies. I don't know, John, did you see Taxi? Remember that show, Taxi?
Oh, yeah.
Parents watch Taxi. Danny DeVito's there directing traffic. There's no need for that with proof, right? So you'd have to call Danny, and Danny would have to call Uncle Joe, and Uncle Joe would call back, and then Danny would call the paralegal, and the paralegal would run in my office and tell me about one of the deliveries, right? And that's just wholly inefficient, obviously, right? So then when it comes to, you get this affidavit weeks later after you're calling for updates that says, I served him on a Tuesday and he's about 6'1", right? And that's all the proof that you have. So now fast forward to what we've done, right? You upload the docs that you want filed and delivered. We'll file them for you. When we get back the conformed copies with the court's signature on the summons for those 6 defendants, we will, technology will find the process server on our platform. Doesn't matter if it's Hawaii, Alaska, Colorado, or Chicago. I think you're from Chicago, maybe, or
St. Louis, but yeah,
St. Louis. That's right. Within a minute or two, somebody's picked it up on our mobile app. Then they're off to deliver, but before they have to deliver, they got to get the documents printed, right? And printers don't work, right? The one thing they're supposed to do. So we let them geolocate through integrated technology, FedEx. The docs are waiting, they pick them up, and then the law firm's tracking in real time with the ability to text our operations specialist and the process server. Hey, the dude's down the street with his daughter at the soccer game. Go get him down there. Boom, it happens, right? And they're able to track them and communicate in real time. And so you create this huge case file of proof of what's happened with geolocations, right? We have technology that makes sure that the process server, it's realistic that the process server served these documents over here on this defendant and then didn't have an 8-hour trip to serve these others 4 hours later. So we have technology there. We have technology to catch any spoofing of their geolocation. If the geolocation's off from the address or the photographs are off, then that's caught by some AI. And so we're trying to eliminate, in this weird $5 billion industry of getting the documents in defendants' hands, any opportunity that what happened to me will happen to other lawyers and law firms. So that is proof in a nutshell.
So now the judge, instead of just having the affidavit, would have this whole trail of where the document went. That's awesome. You're kind of combining an Uber concept with Amazon delivery.
Right. With more proof, which is why we're constantly chasing additional proof so that we don't get to evidentiary hearings, right? Where lawyers and defendants, there's no claim that he harassed me or I wasn't home, that was my uncle and it was a legal serve. All of that stuff we're constantly trying to get more proof. And that's why that and the efficiency gains is why we're now trusted by 25,000 law firms and do 80,000 of these deliveries a month all across the country.
And you could be anywhere as long as the firm that is using your service downloads the platform. And then I guess the driver, the server would also have to have the platform as well, right?
Yeah. And so we're very particular about the people that are allowed on our platform. They have a background check. We have lots of metrics to judge them. If they're going to get most of the serves in an area, they got to do a great job for our customers, right? For our clients. So we're pretty particular about that. Law firms, on the other hand, can sign up and within 30 seconds, they can have a job on the board. And 2 more minutes, they see it's picked up. And it doesn't matter where in the country or the territories or even internationally, they need to serve these documents. It's just whenever you need to open up the technology, when you need an update, you just open it up and you can see exactly what's happening.
I think this is great. I mean, you're automating just one of the processes that could be a big downfall for a firm, and you've experienced that personally. You can do this anywhere in the U.S. Have you thought about expanding into Canada or the UK?
Yes. I mean, look, I have a visionary aspect, and I like to chase a lot of shiny objects, John. But right now, we're sitting about 65 million in revenue, and it's a $5 billion industry in the U.S. Right? So, yes, we've been asked to go to Canada. Most of the Western world delivers process like we do in the United States, a little less litigious in places like France, right? But we could go there, but there's just a lot of wood to chop here in the U.S. still, and we're doubling our growth almost every year, or driving our revenue almost every year. And so I always think about, when do you add another service? And this is good for your law firm, your law firm listeners, right? And I think of it as, you've got this hockey stick, right, of growth in your particular area that you do very well. But when that inevitably, because now we've got more competition, a lot of money's chasing what we've built, inevitably, and it's not happening to us yet, that will level off a little bit. And then you need to look for another territory, right? Going overseas or going into another state if it's plaintiff's firm, or another type of practice that you think, and then you can get that hockey stick there until that levels off. That's how it's hard for me as a visionary founder to not chase the next dream, right? Because that's the fun part. But you really need to make sure you stay focused. And one of the ways I try to stay focused is looking for when that growth starts to level off, which we haven't seen yet. So it doesn't make sense for us to go to Canada.
You're so right. In my own origin story, I worked for an entrepreneurial attorney who expanded beyond St. Louis into all the United States and into the UK. And we had that hockey stick growth. And at some point you hit terminal growth. And then you have to change it up so that you can get back to being innovative. And it's not a bad thing to hit terminal growth. It's just you either want to keep growing and innovate, or it turns into, you remember the Boston consulting matrix where you had the startups and you had the cash cows that were just throwing off cash. I mean,
Yep.
if that's what you want, it can just be a cash cow. So did you bootstrap this on the front end
I
and then
sure
get
did.
some institutional investors?
My fundraising story, the way we capitalize the company is, you know, I did a lot of class actions. I jump into these cases, and then all of a sudden I'm in deep with the costs, right? It's kind of a little bit like proof, right? It's a little naiveness in my personality, and I think a little more courage than I probably deserve, right? And so I jumped into it, bootstrapped through myself and a co-founder, getting the initial MVP, the prototype built, which my paralegal that now works for Proof, but used to work for me at the law firm, said it was so bad she wanted to poke her eye out with a stick. but MVPs, right? You want to build your MVP, and get feedback as quickly as possible so you don't sink a bunch of money into it. So we built that first thing. Had to put in a little bit more money after she told me it was like getting her eye poked out with a stick, and I did that myself, and then we had some growth. And then I went sort of hesitantly to friends and family, and I had a good friend that had exited a business that put in some substantial capital, and that got us to about 5 million in revenue, right? And with a high growth rate. And then I raised an A with a venture fund and a B with a growth equity fund, and then that B was about 2 years ago.
So what's your exit plan?
Oh, that's a great question, and probably should ask my growth equity fund that. It's an interesting time to be in legal tech, John, and I don't know if this is interesting to your viewers or not. There's just a ton of money being put into it, and I see a consolidation of a lot of legal tech providers coming at some point, right? And so we have, we're keeping an eye on sort of that great macro tailwind of lawyers adopting technology because of the pandemic and AI, right? And do we want to be a consolidator or be consolidated? And I don't think we know the answer yet. But I would say our growth equity fund has a flexible thinking, and this is one of the reasons we chose them. They're not bound in a range of time to their LPs, and they're looking to us as a management team to give them the right signals about whether we eventually become an acquirer of other legal technology services or be acquired by a big PE fund or a strategic that's trying to put together sort of that litigation timeline of technologies that a lawyer needs.
You're so right about AI and legal tech. It's moving so fast. And I find there's two camps of attorneys. There are people my age and older who think it's the ruination of the profession. Their craft will never be the same. And then there's the other camp, and I suspect you're in this camp, that thinks that it will help firms compete in bigger platforms. It will modernize and take the routine functions and automate them. There still has to be human intervention, but it will help them compete with larger entities, larger firms.
Yeah. Go ahead, John, finish your thought.
I was just going to say it's moving so fast that every 3 months there's the latest and greatest mousetrap. Now, it sounds like you have something that can flex with those improvements in technology. But we just have to keep our eye on it and use it ethically so that we're not, we still have to have the human oversight.
That's right. No question about it. I mean, there's a reason why things move slower in legal, right? It's just the way it's always been. I am definitely in your camp, and I'll start with, I love lawyers. I love the rule of law. It means a lot to me. I have a copy of the Constitution at my bedside, so I'm a total law dork. And but I believe through and through that technology here is your friend. Lawyers aren't going to lose their jobs, and I'll start with one basic statistic for your listeners. 80%, 80 to 85% of Americans and American businesses can't afford a lawyer to take their case into the courthouse all the way through trial. It's just so darn expensive. So what is the TAM for the delivery of legal services today? It's something like $650 billion, maybe a little lower than that, but it's a lot of money, right? And that's servicing the top 15%, the top 20% of need, the people that can afford it, right? And everybody's chasing that top 15 or 20%. What's the remaining 80 to 85%? I don't think it correlates directly with the 650 billion, right? Because these are smaller cases, but there's a lot of green fields, as we call them in the tech business. There, if you can adopt technology and be more efficient, then you can move down market. That's number one. Number two is what you exactly said. Hey, you want to go compete with Skadden? Right? You want to go compete with the big boys in your particular great area of law that you have, not perfected, it's practice, but that you've gotten to be very highly skilled at. Well, technology may give you an opportunity to do that where you couldn't before, especially when I'm a downstream client now. I buy way more legal services than I deliver as a lawyer. I don't practice hardly at all anymore. And I'm asking those questions. Give me a good estimate. I want to hold you to that estimate. And it's a more competitive process. I'm looking for creative billing strategies. And what happens when you've got a fixed billing arrangement or an estimate? You as a lawyer need to adopt technology to allow you to make profit there. And that is how you go compete with these folks like, the big dogs, right?
You're so right about the fixed fee. I mean, the client loves it because they can budget and they know what they're going to spend. And that's exactly how we price our VCFO services. There's a menu of things we can do or you can do. We pick and choose who's going to do them, and we set a price. In fact, I can go through a series of questions with you and in 45 minutes come up with, here's a statement of work and here's the price. And it's flexible because if 2 months into it, you decide you want us to do payables now, we just flip the switch, issue a new statement of work, and move forward.
And the lawyers that can do that are going to win a lot of work because the rest of the world requires that and demands that, right? Who besides lawyers get to say, I don't know how much it's going to cost. It could be $1 million or $2 million. It could be 500,000. I don't know. And I know it's a little harder to estimate as a lawyer than maybe, certainly than a general contractor on a construction project with drawings, right? But the lawyers that figure that out, and there's data and there's AI now to help you figure that out and help you estimate better and then track, my goodness, you're going to win some work. You're going to win some work.
Well, and it helps out from a communication standpoint as well, because the client's not afraid to call and talk to the attorney or to the accountant and say, hey, this came up, what should we do? Whereas in the past, they're thinking, oh my God, the clock's running at $600 an hour. I got to be quick.
Right.
In my former life, I did a lot of tax work, and we worked with attorneys for the client, the trust officers, and the client would always call the trust officer because they weren't billing them by the hour. And then the trust officer would call the attorney and the accountant and say, Mrs. McGillicuddy wants to do this. What do you think? So it's just a mindset of, if the price is fixed and it's fair for both sides, then I want you to call and collaborate with us. Hey, back to proof.
Yeah.
Does it integrate with case management systems? And if so, which ones?
Of course, yes. And that's very intuitive, right? As a law firm managing partner, I want everybody, we bought Clio a while ago, right? So I want everybody to be using Clio as its case management software. And today we won Clio's best litigation app or something like that a couple of years ago. We are a button in Clio. So the beautiful thing, and I don't want to leave out our other providers like, Filevine and some of the others, My Case, et cetera. But Clio was the first one we integrated with. So the way it works with all of them is you're going through your case, right? signed up your client, you've engaged your client, you got a signed engagement agreement, you're negotiating maybe with the insurance company or the opposing party, right? You're going along, you're all in case management software, and then one day you're just like, I had enough. They're not paying me what my client wants, right? They're not going to get there. They're just not. And a fit of frustration, you're like, I'm going to draft this complaint. I'm going to get those guys. This is how I thought, at least. And today, you just drafted your complaint, signed it electronically with another integrated, service like DocuSign, right? And then you press the proof button, right? And proof will, and you just say file and serve that thing, and proof will file it, serve it. All that functionality we talked about is right inside of Clio, right? And so you're communicating without leaving Clio exactly like you would in the Proof app. And then the beauty, this is from managing partners' perspective, right? The affidavit gets dropped into your case management system, Clio or my case or whoever, right? Into your pleadings file, right? It's been served and filed, right? And then following goes the invoice into your invoice file for that matter. This is all automatic. And then finally, the beauty is that our charge, what we charge to deliver and file those documents, drops onto your client's bill without you ever having to do anything. And managing partners, they wake up, worried about how their cases are going, about personnel decisions, but they always wake up about unreimbursed costs, right? That's the one thing.
That's a huge risk for a lot of firms, is not capturing those costs. And it sounds like with Clio anyway, you've got this easy button that makes it automated.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, so you're not gonna lose getting reimbursed for the cost of proof.
Hey, before we wrap up, I want to touch on a couple things. One, you grew up south of Kansas City and you currently live in the state of Denver. Yep. And there's got to be this conflict with the Broncos and the Chiefs being in the same division.
You're putting me on the spot now.
It's okay to have a leg in both camps. I'm a Chiefs season ticket holder, so I don't care for the Broncos, but I can see where living there might make it different.
Yeah, I've been here for
that.
I've been here for a long time. I've been here for 25 years, or almost 25 years, maybe 24. This is a tricky, I got to be a total politician on this one. So this is how I'm going to try to spin this thing. Head to head, I always root for the Chiefs, right? I still have that. I think your formative years, your high school, college years, even when the Chiefs were losing all the time, you develop sort of this undying devotion for them. But like this year, when their Chiefs are out of it, and then I'm rooting for the Broncos all the way, because I like to have a Super Bowl party. I like to have all the fun that the NFL games, and especially the NFL playoffs, bring. And it's always nicer to have a dog in the fight. So I'm a fan of both, but certainly the Chiefs first and foremost.
We're in that dead zone where there is no football except for the XFL until August. So, but I can understand your affinity for both. And when the Chiefs were out of it, I was hoping the Broncos, but the whole Bo Nix ankle thing just was tragic.
Yeah, and all the hype about how the backup was, and bless his heart, right? But
it's a tough situation.
Bo Nix wins that game, I think. I mean, it's impossible to say for certain, but he's been a tough quarterback for the Broncos the last couple of years. So,
hey, before we wrap up, Eric, what's the best way for folks to get a hold of you to inquire about Proof?
Oh my goodness. You can go to proofserve.com, right, and see what we got to offer. You can email me at eric@proofserve.com. And I will get back to you for sure. I've got a fantastic executive assistant, and she makes sure I'm on top of stuff. And so either of those ways, and I'll get you where you need to go. I'll even give you a demo. I love still doing that.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning in to Judicial Dollars and Cents. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps us grow and ensures you never miss an episode. We'll see you next time on Judicial Dollars and Cents.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us on Judicial Dollars and Cents, presented by Anders Virtual CFO Services. If you found value in today's conversation, be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcast. To learn more about how Anders helps law firms strengthen their financial foundations and drive growth, visit anderscpa.com. Until next time, keep making smart decisions that make perfect sense.